Okay, so for 2.1, for assignment part two here, so there's a couple ways you can do this. You can use certain online mortgage calculators. Not all of them are going to work. A lot of the Canadian ones won't because in Canada you can only get a 5-year term. In America, you can get more. So you can use online calculators. I'm going to show you with the calculator we've been using the whole time here, how to do that. But so a couple things to note here. So we have $250,000 house here. We have a 5% down payment. So you have to subtract that from that, right? Because that's not being built in a loan. Only 95% of this is what we're actually loaning out. We know it's a 4% interest payment for a 25-year term, and it is compounded semi-annually with monthly payments. So there's a couple things to consider here. If we find one of these, if we find any one of these, the total interest amount, the investment amount, or the monthly payments, if we find any one of those things, we are able to use that to find everything else. So for example, if it's, well, what are my monthly payments? There's a couple ways I can do this. If I know, for example, that I'm gonna use easy numbers, that maybe it's a 200 and so first off, this is how much it's gonna be when this is 95% of 250,000, okay? So let's say, for example, I know I'm pulling a random number out of nowhere. It's $100,000 in interest on the house. So here's the total thing. Now we have to think about this. This is that, so that amount of money, that 300 and some $100,000, well, that's for 12 payments a year for 25 years. So that's 300 payments there. So I take the amount divided by my monthly payments, which is 300. And in this case, this would be what my monthly payment is. So let's try it with not so easy numbers here. Hi, kitty. Sorry, my kitty's doing some stuff right now, buddy. All right, so here's what we know. So I know it's 300 payments. I know it's 300 payments. I know the interest is 5%. I know the present value, how much I owe on the house is $237,500, right? That's 250,000, and that's 95% of that. I took away that down payment. Now, I'm trying to figure out the payment amounts, right? How many monthly payments? I do know that the future value at the end of this mortgage, hey, I own it. It's paid off. Awesome. I know it's paying every month, so 12 times a year, and I know it's compounded semi-annually, so 2 times a year. So once you have this, what you can do is you can go in here, you can solve it for the payment. And oh, so my payments are $1,381 and 31 cents. Cool. So now I know what my monthly payments are. And then how did you find this stuff? Well, you put it into your calculator, right? So you figure out like what the interest rate is at that point, right? Because well, like here's the thing. Well, how do you figure out the interest rate? Well, you know what the monthly payments are, right? And you know how many times you're doing that payment. So you can just take that, times those two numbers together, you get the total amount it's going to cost you. So if I know that the house is going to cost me $400,000, well, I take the 400,000, I subtract it by what my mortgage was for, that 237,000. So that's how you can figure out question 2 and 3. Now for this one here, this one's kind of tricky. How can you figure that out? There's a couple ways that you can do that. I'm going to recommend, let's use an online calculator for that one, right? So I need to find one that's going to work for me. So I got an online calculator, yada, yada. Oh, sorry, online mortgage calculator. And let's put USA in here. So there's a couple ones here, so for example, I could use this one. We'll try this one here, see if it spits it out. So home value was $250,000. I'm saying 250 this time because it has the down payment built in. It's a 5-year interest rate. It's a 25-year loan term. We're not going to bother with any of this stuff here. So we are going to do calculate. And if you look here, so for the first year, for each year, it's showing how much my money goes to my principal, which is that part, and how much goes to my interest. So it shows that stuff there. Obviously, as we've talked about the start of the loan, more of the money goes towards the interest. Towards the end of the loan, more of the money goes towards the principal. So if you want, so what the question asks? The question asks, for year one. So this would be your first payment for year one. Realistically speaking, this would be your last payment for year 25, to show the difference. As you can see, the interest was $5, and at the last payment, whereas the first payment was two-thirds of that. You'd have to figure out the ratio there. We might be able to show a loan breakdown. No. Now, I'm okay with it doing like year by year. If you show the difference between the years, that's fine. The goal here is just to see like, wow, what a difference. So if you can't find a calculator that shows you the month by month, just a year by year is totally fine. And then for this one-to-one ratio, again, looking at it, like when does this start evening out? Like, oh, a little bit more interest in principal here. Ooh, that's basically equal, right? You're looking at that. Well, that's almost the exact same amount of interest in principal. So a year 2024, which is year what? 1, 2, 3, 4. You just keep going, going, going until you figure out what year that is. Maybe that's year, I don't know, 16 or 17. I'm not counting. Um, buddy. Um, so for this one here, this 13th payment at the end of the year, how can you figure that out? Well, payments a year. How would that happen? What would that do? It's if I add a 13th payment a year, it's still compounded twice a year. And we see that this is what our payment ends up being, right? So same thing. You could figure that out. And see how long it would take to pay that off. Or you could use, again, an online calculator. This one here, for example, doesn't have a option to add another thing, but maybe this one does, for example. So yeah, this one here has more monthly payments. So again, you could put in all the stuff here, blah, 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 put all the stuff in, and then you can do, hey, a one-time yearly payment at, maybe the end of the year or something like that. So extra yearly payment of, whatever the payment is. We said it was like 1318 or something like that. And you can calculate that. So I hope that helps out with that. If not, please let me know.